Chapter 17, Draft Number 2, Electric Bugaloo. Writing my first draft takes about 2 months, as long as life doesn't interfere horribly. That's a long time to keep the details of your story in mind, especially in the throes of creation. Once you're done, though, it's time to tackle the hard part. You've played with your opening scenes, so it's time for draft 2. I find this the most difficult slog of all, the one that I'm most likely to procrastinate. Why is that? Because I'm not creating things anew, but editing what I've already done. I'm familiar with it, so it's less exciting to read. I skip over parts because I know it, but that's exactly what you aren't supposed to do at this point. A fellow author friend of mine calls her second draft a rewrite, and she literally rewrites the entire draft. However, she's a discovery writer, and this may really be her first draft, with her nominal first draft being more equivalent to my synopsis, albeit longer and more detailed. Regardless, the process works for her. Remember, every single author works in a different way, due to different strengths, passions, talents, and motivations. Finding your own best way is the only thing you need to do. This book, as well as any other writing book, can only help you find that best way for yourself. Now, a great trick to help me get over the boringness of editing the second draft is to put the project aside for a while and work on something else. This works to cleanse my palate, create some distance between me and this project. Since I typically layer my novels, this often works out well. After the first draft of Legacy of Luck, Book 3, is done, I can work on the editing for Legacy of Truth, Book 2. Then I'll work on the final edits of Legacy of Hunger, Book 1. Or I can work on the planning stages of Misfortune of Vision, Book 4. Even if you don't have another project to work on, take a break. A couple weeks, if you can. Once you've given yourself that space, you can start rereading the novel from the beginning, with a critical eye. The things I look for in a second draft, and correct as I read. Tie up subplots and story threads I started early in the book and forgot to address later. This happens to me a lot, as I leave breadcrumbs early on, thinking I'm so clever, and completely forget they exist halfway through the first draft. Character arcs that don't make sense. Wait, they started out as a winner, why are they now this grand adventurer? Split them into 2 people, or give them some reason for the change. Flesh out underdescribed scenes, or cut down overdescribed scenes. I tend to bowl through scene descriptions in my first draft, since I write so fast. I love the descriptions, so I know I'll come back and work on them later. Vary the actions of characters, I tend to have lots of them cross their arms, clench their fists, or nod. So many nodding characters. It's like a bauble doll festival in my first drafts. Fix unbelievable/wooden dialogue. My first drafts usually have flat dialogue, or characters with very similar voices. This is where I can vary it to make my characters unique and identifiable. Brandon Sanderson says that if he can figure out what character is speaking without a dialogue tag, you've done a good job. Flesh out high-action scenes, especially around the climax of the novel. Because it's high action, I tend to write these scenes quickly, as it's playing in my head and I only type so fast. Going back to fill in the details I see but didn't write helps a lot. Fill in plot holes. There are always plot holes. So many plot holes. If I've changed character names, or added/removed one, ensure they're all changed. My latest urban fantasy novel started off with a family of 12 hosting the main characters. I realized I had to simmer that down to a family of 6, and it was still a lot. Punch up the tension in every scene. I always need more tension, as I tend to write drawing room level boring in my first draft. Cut out excess scenes that don't add to the plot or character arc. This can be difficult, and where the phrase "kill your darlings" applies. Yes, I know you love that scene with the vicar serving tea, but what does it really accomplish? Can you add a sentence to the next scene referencing the action and accomplish the same effect? Do it. Fill in flat characters. Make sure each one has motivation, personality, and a purpose. Combine side characters if need be. Ensure each has at least a rudimentary description or prominent characteristic. Maybe cut a bunch of characters out. Going through my entire draft a second time usually takes a much shorter time than the first draft. Instead of 2 months, it often takes about 3 weeks, if I'm not procrastinating. Which I do. However, I tend to procrastinate by working on other writing projects, so that's fine. However, eventually you need to get back to this one. Despite all the pain, it's invaluable to read your draft several times to refine and polish the storyline, characters, setting, action, dialogue, etc. Some authors prefer to do themed passes, i.e., read once just for character, read once just for dialogue, which allows them to remain in a focused mindset through the entire book. Others prefer to read it as a reader would, letting the story coalesce in their mind as it progresses. Reading it aloud or having a tool like WhisperSync Read It can be another tool. No matter how diligently you read your draft, though, even if you're on the 10th run-through, there comes a time when you, as the author, become blind to the words on the page. You know what you meant to write, and your mind sees your intent, rather than the words you've actually written. That's when you need outside help. Yes, you need outside help. No, you shouldn't do this all alone. Beta readers, editors, proofreaders, none of these are tasks that the author should do. Now, if you happen to have extensive training as an editor, nope, you still shouldn't be relying upon only yourself to edit your work. You're too close to it. You will miss the forest for the trees. Fresh eyes are the best when it comes to editing. That will bring us to our next chapter.